Welcome to Battle Streams in Middle-earth. I'm your channel host Damian, and this is Quest of the Ringbearer. So indeed, welcome to Battle Streams in Middle-earth and to our review of the Quest of the Ringbearer supplement. This of course is the brand new supplement for the Middle-earth strategy battle game from Games Workshop, and we are incredibly excited about here, and I can't wait to go through it. I'm excited for a number of reasons. This is the first time we've done a video like this on this channel. We're trying to do a bit more content on here, and as ever, the point of Battle Streams in Middle-earth is to help you clear your backlog. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to dig through those old figures that are being unloved and get some paint on them. So don't sit and watch this video. Go and grab your brushes, go and grab some paints and paint something old that you thought you'd never paint and that has been lying unloved for all these years. What's super cool about Quest of the Ringbearer is it encourages you to do just that. This takes us right back to 2001 and 2002, the earliest days of the game and the earliest models, and it really encourages us to try and get some paint on some of those long lost models. So throughout this video I'm going to take you through it. I am crazy excited about it because this is exactly the sort of thing that I like. This, for my mind, is the best targeted supplement to me since the new editions launched, essentially. So I liked Gondor at War and I liked War in Rohan, and I enjoyed them a lot. But my preference has always been Fellowship stuff. And whilst Quest of the Ringbearer takes Frodo all the way from Bag End to Mount Doom, there's a heavy emphasis on the journey of the Fellowship of the Ring, and it's something that I'm super excited to get on board with. As you can already see, and you might have seen if you follow some of our other videos, this supplement has already encouraged me to build this board for the Watcher in the Water and to paint my Watcher in the Water tentacles, and I've got my classic Fellowship of the Ring here. These are models that I've owned for nearly 20 years, and I painted some of them about 10 years ago and some of them this year, and it's been really cool to have these classic models out with models I've just painted on a board I've just built. And this really is just scratching the surface of what I hope Quest of the Ringbearer is going to encourage us to do. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to jump in and start taking you through Quest of the Ringbearer. I will say my take on this is going to be a fairly emotional one. I'm going to have a look about this and talk about the kind of the nostalgic sense of it and those kind of things. I'm not particularly here to focus on the rules and the profiles. I think there's loads of videos going on already that are going through those things. We will have a look at the Legendary Legions, of course, but my main emphasis on this is going to be looking at the narrative scenarios and exploring where they come from and that sort of thing. So without further ado, I'm going to spin the camera around and get stuck in. So here we go. This is Quest of the Ringbearer. We're going to take a look through it and see what's inside it, with a particular leaning towards the narrative scenarios. Before I get started, I want to state that one of the reasons I'm so excited about this is because this, to me, very much feels like the new version of this. So this, for any newer players out there, is the Fellowship of the Ring Journey book. This is not the version that was released with the first version of the film back in 2001, but this came out in, I think, 2005 or 2006, just after the Blue Rulebook was released. And this Journey book is possibly, I think, one of the greatest supplements Games Workshop have ever done, essentially. It's absolutely beautiful. It takes the whole journey. It's obviously only Fellowship of the Ring, but it's like an early version of Quest of the Ringbearer, and it takes everything from not even the hobbits to begin with, but also the Dunedain patrolling the borders of the Shire from the Ringwraiths in some early scenarios like the Hunt Begins and stuff, and it takes us right up to the climax at Amon Hen. And this book is what got me back into the game, essentially. When I got back into it around 2010, I had the Blue Rule book, and I found this, and this is the book I used to build my collection. I collected the models for the scenarios in this book, and it's very well worn, and I've played the scenarios so many times, and what's so exciting is that this is basically the updated version of this. This Quest of the Ringbearer is the new one. There were other journey books, of course. We had ones for the Two Towers and for the Return of the King, but and we will see some a definite influence of the Two Towers one in this within Quest of the Ringbearer. There's only one scenario from the Return of the King one. The Return of the King one, I think, is fairly commonly agreed to not be as good as the other two, but these two books were hugely informative in getting me back into the game, and it makes me feel so fuzzy knowing that this is basically the new version of that. So I think this to me, this supplement is like a love letter to these two. It wears its influences very, very much on its sleeve, and you can really see the influence of this. And we'll kind of talk about that as we go on throughout the scenarios. But yeah, that kind of is part of, at least part of, what got me so excited so early on for this new supplement. So let's get stuck in. I'm going to go through it, but I'm not going to necessarily read every page or anything. We get this lovely frontispiece as always. It began with the Forging the Great Rings, and we get the introduction, which takes us through what things normally are. We get a lovely history of the ring section, which are always nice to read through. I don't know about you, but I do read these in chronological order now. Like, I sometimes do skip ahead to the profiles or the legendary legions, but I can't. I will have to read this before I can read any narrative supplements. And so it's just part of it. I feel like if I don't read it right at the start, I'll never go back to it. We get that, and we get the tale of years as it pertains to the ring, and a big old picture of Isildur, who famously did well with the ring. And then we get into the scenarios, which is really what I'm most excited about. So let's have a look. First off, we have Farmer Maggot's Crop. So this is a scenario that, as far as I can tell, we've never had before. There's never been a version of this sort of thing. And we have the three hobbits. We have Frodo, Sam... Oh no, we have all four in this, sorry. Frodo, Sam, Merry and Pippin. And they're basically against Farmer Maggot. And you'll even note that on here the hobbits are listed as evil. And it does say here, whilst the hobbits definitely are not evil, the fact that they are stealing crops from Father Maggot means they play the role of the evil force in this scenario. And this is a super cool scenario where you've got a little field here, and this is Farmer Maggot's house, and there's a kennel here, and the hobbits have to basically get into the field, grab cabbages and bring them back to the stash, and you have to do that multiple times whilst not getting chased off by the dogs. It's awesome, and I love that this is the first scenario in here, and you know, the end one is the whole ambush, you know, the end of Fellowship of the Rings, the ambush at Amon Hen, and this whole book takes us to Mount Doom and the Battle of the Black Gate, and it's kind of crazy to think that we start with these hobbits stealing cabbages and we end with the Crack of Doom. But this is really cool, and I'm very, very excited to give this a go. We will be seeing this one hopefully before too long, and it's nice to see Farmer Maggot getting some love. So very, very cool stuff there. Shortcuts make long delays is a classic from the Fellowship of the Ring journey book. So what we'll see is that there's an awful lot of scenarios in here that have been basically lifted out of the original Fellowship journey book and then updated and developed. So the maps will be familiar, and that's kind of what gives me a lot of a warm fuzzy feeling when I see this, that this map immediately reminded me of this scenario. And we have the ring wraiths who start kind of around the board. There are 3 ring wraiths, and we also have Gildor here, and then the hobbits kind of have to cross the board there, and everyone's working as sentries, and you have to kind of sneak past and everything. It's really good fun. And for me, particularly being on Battle Streams in Middle-earth, what I'm really excited about is using this supplement as a way to build my collection. I've got 6 painted ring wraiths on foot, again from about 9 years ago, and I've had 3 more metal ones just in the case since the same time. I bought them at the same time, and they've just never been painted, and these early scenarios require 3 ring wraiths, so now's the time for them. I'm going to dig out those 3 classic ring wraiths, and I'm going to get them painted up and use them in these scenarios. So that's really cool and really, really exciting. I can't wait to get stuck into that. So yeah, very much cool kind of early scenarios with the hobbits trying to escape their ring wraiths. Next one is Buckleberry Ferry. This is another classic from the Fellowship Journey book, which again I've played. We also, back on the GBHL channel, we did play through the Fellowship of the Ring Journey book. So if you go onto that channel and you search for Fellowship of the Ring campaign, we play through every scenario on this and play the whole thing as a campaign. It took us about 5 months or so. And so all of these videos, all of these scenarios, if you want to see the previous version, they are on there on the GBHL if you want to go and have a look at them. And what's really nice is just seeing how they've all been subtly updated for the new version in some way or the other. But again, we have this lovely Shire board covered in trees, and we have the Brandywine going down here. I will be building this river. As part of that, I'm certainly going to be going big on the scenery for this book, so I'm going to be building the Brandywine pretty soon to be used in one of these scenarios, which is cool and I'm very excited about. And then the hobbits again, you have the hobbits deploying here, the ring wraiths deploying along here, and the ring wraiths are sentries, and the hobbits have to dodge past them and cross on the funky little ferry, which I'm also going to have a go at making. So that's very, very cool. The Old Forest. So this is a new scenario. This one It wasn't in the Fellowship of the Ring Journey book, but it does draw on an older scenario. It comes from Odovacar Bolger's Promenade, which was a scenario in the what's it called, Scaur in the Shire, the original Scaur in the Shire, and it takes the idea that basically in that there was a group of hobbits trapped in the middle of the board, and they had to escape from all these trees that were moving around it. And what's basically happened now is the Middle Earth team have transplanted that and made it an old forest scenario, which is really, really cool. I really like the old forest section in the in the book, and it'll be cool to play this. I have to say, I've read this, and the hobbits, we've got a 2-inch board, so we've got 24 inches to cross here, and it just says that it is densely packed with trees. And at the start of each turn, the evil player rolls a d6 to see how many trees are moving this turn. And then during the evil player's move phase, they can move that number of trees up to d6 inches. And then what has to happen, basically? So you've got maybe 3, 4, you know, obviously 1, 2, 5, and 6 are also available, but take an average of 3 or 4 trees, probably charging the hobbits every turn. And to win the objectives, the good player has to get all 4 hobbits off the eastern board edge. And I mean, I'd be very curious to try it, but I think that's going to be really tough for the hobbits. Now, of course, the idea is that in the book they do get captured by the trees, so you know the forest does win. But it'll be a challenge for anyone certainly to give that a go and see if they can beat the trees. Again, I think Odovacar's Bolger's Promenade is on the channel somewhere. I feel like I remember Jamie playing it back in the day. So it's well worth giving a watch. But these guys definitely have further to go. I feel like the hobbits in that have about 12 inches to go. But yeah, good luck to you, and it'll be interesting to see if anyone manages to do that. Next up, again, it's another classic from the Fellowship of the Ring Journey book, which is the Fog on the Barrow Downs. Very, very similar. We've got our 4 barrows here with the hobbits inside, and then there are 4 barrow wights in there, and there's 1 in each barrow, and they have to kind of come out and they have to get the hobbits back to the barrows. They can also, within 3 inches of the barrow, they get to use a free will point, which is going to be horrific for paralyze. And then basically it's quite dark that it says here the barrow wights are not trying to simply kill the hobbits, instead they're intending to use them as a sacrifice to perform some ancient ritual with. So once they get paralysed, the barrow wight can drag a paralysed hobbit at full speed but immediately drops them off charge. And if a barrow wight starts its move in base contact with both a barrow and a paralysed hobbit, they can attempt to sacrifice them. And on 4+, it's been sacrificed or removed as a casualty. So it's a really kind of dark scenario where the barrow wights kind of drift out, grab hobbits, and then bring them back and try and kill them in their barrows. But again, could well be quite good fun. And it uses the infamous Tom and Goldberry. We've got here Tom and Goldberry, who I'm pretty sure aren't available, barrow wights, who I'm pretty sure aren't available, and the paralysed hobbits, who are definitely not available. I think this is a prime candidate for a made to order in the future. That would be, if I was a betting man, I'd be saying Fog on the Barrow Downs as a made to order, definitely coming through. And I think I'd take the plunge on that. I'm pretty sure I've got 2 barrow wights and I've got Tom, but I haven't got the paralysed hobbits and I haven't got Goldberry, so I think I'd pull the trigger on that one probably. Next up, we have one of the scenarios that I'm most excited to play. This is Nazgul in Bree, and it's not entirely new, but it's new for the Journey books. It wasn't in the Fellowship of the Ring book, but a version of it appears in Battle Games in Middle Earth, issue 61, which is their kind of Bree issue. And there's a version in that, and it's obviously way back when, and this is the cool scenario that is going to include Barlam and Butterbur and Harry Goatleaf, who are new profiles, who obviously weren't in the old one. But it's set entirely in Bree. We have the prancing pony in the middle, and the hobbits Harry's here, guarding the gate, God love him, as 4 ringwraiths come in. I don't rate his chances. And the hobbits have to basically sneak out and escape Bree without being seen. And there's a lovely little game mechanic here that basically, if after both sides have moved, a ringwraith can draw a line of sight to a good model within 12 inches, then the heroes have been spotted. And if the line of sight is obscured, the ringwraith must roll a d6 to determine if they can see the model. Now that might seem quite easy. This is a 4 by 4 foot board, so that means there's 24 inches here. So you would think it'd be quite easy for a wraith to ride on. But crucially, the ringwraiths enter the board at the start of the evil player's first move phase via the gates. They may charge on the turn they arrive. From the second turn onwards, roll a d6 for each ringwraith before they move. On a 1 to 3, the player moves the evil player moves it, and on a 4+, the good player moves it. So that's really, really cool, because what it can hopefully mean, because you want to make a bit of a game of it, is that for the first few turns, the ring race kind of gets sent around here to these buildings, kind of searching other parts of Bree. I love this sort of stuff. I love any scenario that involves people trying to kind of creep past each other and really make the most of the terrain. And I'm mega, mega, mega excited to play this one. They suggest things like, you know, what exactly do they say here? The rest of the board should have plenty of buildings, walls, and other things you may find around the village. And I think they're really important to have line of sight blockers to give the hobbits a bit of a chance. So lots of fences and lots of barrels and crates and all that sort of stuff. I've got a fairly large foreground village. I'm going to be using that for this at some point once the new models come out. What I don't have is the prancing pony. But another thing I'm going to definitely pull the trigger on now. I'm going to buy the foreground stoic arms. I've been wanting it for ages, and this is the reason to get it. So I'm thinking of getting that out and assembling that as a kind of Christmas project, and then playing this one in the new year. So really, really excited to give this one a go. It's probably my favourite scenario in here, I think, but that might just be because it's the newest. Next up, it's an absolute classic. We have Weathertop, very, very, very similar to the Fellowship journey book, but there are definitely changes in here. There's subtle changes in the way the ring wraiths work, and even the board, having a 2x2 board essentially. But it's a classic scenario. I can't imagine there's anyone out there who hasn't played Weathertop at some point. We have Frodo, Sam, Merry, Pippin, and Aragorn, and then we have the Witch King and 4 wraiths. And you basically have the evil are trying to kill Frodo, and good are trying to kill the ring wraiths. And you'd think that'd be easy for Aragorn, but of course he doesn't start on the board. From the second turn onwards, roll a d6 at the end of each good move phase. On a 4+, Aragorn has arrived, and place him in base contact with any edge of Ammon's Saw. He can't charge, but he may otherwise act normally. This is very, very cool. I don't have a Weathertop. I haven't had a Weathertop in the past. It's never been something that I've thought about getting the Forge World one, and I've never kind of quite felt comfortable taking the plunge. And then, if you can't guess, I am crazy, crazy, crazy excited about this release. And when it was announced, I thought, why not? We're going to go big on the campaign, as I'll get to later. And so, guess what? I pulled the trigger, and the other day this arrived. Forge World Weathertop. So yeah, this is very, 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 very cool. I'm really excited about it, and I'm looking forward to kind of getting stuck into this. You get this massive piece of Weathertop here, and you also get a big bag of Weathertop with all these kind of pieces in it. So I picked up the Forge World model. So I thought, if we're going to do the Weathertop scenario on the channel, we better do it in the real Weathertop. So I can't wait to get stuck into that as well. So as you can see, my scenery enthusiasm and bug is very, very much up at the moment. I'm really excited about getting stuck into all of this stuff. And probably, I've taken on far too much already. After Weathertop, we have Flight to the Ford, which is another great use of the river I'll be building. Lots of trees, and you have Arwen and the Ringbearer being chased by the 9. This is a really, really cool scenario. Again, this comes from the journey book, the early version of this. And it's a really interesting dynamic one, because the ring wraiths are basically, Arwen starts here and she has to cross the river, and you have to try and wipe out the ring wraiths, while Aragorn and the hobbits kind of charge behind the race like they do in the book. And the ring wraiths, they only start the game with 3 will. I think the Witch King has 5 will. So they can't do a lot of magic. Essentially, they can't do too much. And they also have this wonderful rule where, because they're so knackered from the horse chase, they only move d6 plus 4 inches each turn. And if they roll a 6, the horse collapses from exhaustion and chucks the ring wraith. So that's really, really cool. So it might seem like Arwen's really up against it, but I think she's got a good chance in this, actually. And as well as that, you deploy, is it 5, I believe, first? Evil Players deploys the Witch King and 4 ring wraiths here, so there's only 5 to begin with. And the others, you have to roll a dice for. From the second turn onwards, roll a d6 for the other 4 ring wraiths. On a 4+, they enter the board from either of these 2 edges, but on a 1, they've suffered an accident and they're removed from the game as a casualty, so you might not even get your other 4. So again, this would be one that I'd be really cool to see played out. Again, crazy hobby plans. I've got the 9 all mounted. I don't have any of them painted, and I've got this kind of mad idea about trying to do them all in a day sometime in October, just trying to smash them all out in one day. Who knows? But look out for that. More crazy hobby plans. Then we get to another brand new scenario, which is the Pass of Caradhras, and that one is one of the card games ones. We've seen these in the various supplements. It's something that Jay is currently really enjoying putting in slightly different games to represent scenarios that you couldn't really turn into a game. So on the Pass of Caradhras, there's no one for them to fight. It's just the Fellowship walking along a mountain, so it'd be quite hard to do as SBG. So instead, what happens is we get this kind of card game where you have to start here and basically kind of cross the various cards and escape off the mountain here. I also want to take a moment, particularly on this one, to talk about the photography. That in this, the photography is absolutely beautiful. And we've seen a few pictures already. Aragorn there with Weathertop, the Bree one, Fog on the Barrow Downs, this gorgeous, gorgeous recreation of the Hydra from the Ringwraith. And there's lots more to come. But I didn't in any way dislike the photography in the previous supplements, but it never jumped out to me saying, you know, this is incredible. Whereas in this one, it really looks like they've kind of gone the extra mile to try and really show off these stylized images, and every one looks completely different. It doesn't look like they've all just been dumped on different parts of the same generic terrain board, which is really, really great to see. And it's also really, really good to see these classic metal Fellowship models getting some love. So who knows, maybe we'll be seeing those in a made-to-order sometime soon as well. Next up we have Wargs in the Night, which is a newly named version of a classic scenario called The Hounds of Sauron from the Journey book. I've played this so many times in my life. It's a fantastic scenario. A 4x4 board, the Fellowship all deploy in a 3-inch ring around the middle, and then they just have wave after wave after wave of Wargs. You have 18 models and a Wild Warg Chieftain. They're all fearless, so if you have any sort of terrifying aura from Gandalf, that won't help you. And they all come back. So whenever you kill them, they come back. You don't have to roll for them, they just automatically come back. So there'll always be kind of 18 in play. And it never ends until you draw priority. From turn 11 onwards, if priority is ever drawn, then the game immediately ends. So if you just imagine that once you get to turn 11, you might think it's nearly over, but you might still play for infinity turns more. Which could be really, really, really knackering on the Fellowship if you're playing this in a campaign. So yeah, I think the Fellowship was it's been a long time since I played it, but my memory is they normally come through it. But it can be, if you're playing this in a campaign and you get to 18, 19 turns instead of 12, I think you're going to feel pretty hard done by. But it's really cool to have this moment representing this scene in the books that doesn't happen in the film, and it's a really cool classic narrative scenario of a few heroes that the classic Fellowship is running against a bunch of chaff. And also, of course, this is the photo that caused all the drama, because this is the photo with the as yet unreleased model of Bill. They have now, because I do wonder if they hadn't announced it. They'd announced Harry and Barlaman, and I do wonder if they were holding on to the picture of Bill until someone spotted it in a book, because they hadn't shown anything about Bill, and then as soon as someone spotted him and it went all over the Facebook pages, the day after, I think it was, they revealed Bill. So I wonder if they were hanging on to that. But yeah, Bill's there. He's going to be a part of a 3-pack with the other two Bree heroes. So by the time you watch this, it may well already be available to order, but I'll definitely be picking up that 3-pack. It's going to be very, very cool. Next up, we have another very exciting scenario. It won't surprise you to hear I'm keen on this one based on the board I was talking about earlier. This is the Watcher in the Water at the Gates of Moria. Why I think this is particularly exciting is because, despite the fact that this model of the Watcher in the Water was released in 2012, we've never actually had a narrative scenario pitching the Fellowship against the monster. We've had a fair few, one of which myself and Steve played on the Battle Streams of Middle-earth, that were the Fellowship against the tentacles, the kind of old tentacles on bases. But there's never been a narrative scenario to Foe the Watcher, which was really surprising when I went back and had a look. There is one, I think in the old Moria sourcebook, where the Watcher attacks the Barlin's company outside Moria, the Westgate scenario, but never against the Fellowship. So this is really cool, and guess what? 2x2 board with a big pool of water, that's perfect for my pool. So I'm going to be absolutely playing this and getting my Watcher painted up. I've got my Watcher, he's in a bag, he's been very, very close to being done for several years, and really old hands at the game may well remember me unboxing him on the GBHL podcast, I think in 2014. So I think 6 years ago, me, Tom and James all unboxed my Watcher in the Water, and I think I was very kind of optimistic about painting him that year, and he's still sitting in, I say unboxed, it was actually unbagged because he was in a polythene bag, and I think he's still sitting in exactly the same bag as he was then. But I am keen now, again, as I am with so much stuff that about surrounding this supplement, to get him out and get him done. And it's a very, very cool scenario because he basically can't be killed. That's how you get around it. I think people would be very kind of find it very easy to think, well, how the Fellowship can surely just trap him and kill him, but he can't actually die. He just keeps retreating, and so the Fellowship have to try and escape into Moria and save Frodo, whilst also kind of keeping the Watcher at bay, essentially, which I think is a really cool dynamic, and I'll be very keen to try that one out soon. And then, arguably, is this the most iconic scenario in the whole of SBG, Balin's Tomb? This is an absolute classic. It's the 2x2 board, and it's very, very similar to the version in the Journey book. But there is one major difference. They put these trapdoors in, and goblins can come out of the trapdoors on the well. In the version of the Journey book, goblins could only come through the door. And I think you could definitely enter through trapdoors in a different version. I think possibly in the version that came with the Mines of Moria box set, I think it was. It might have been in there that you could enter goblins in. So this is, again, it's a lovely kind of update and amalgamation of the various Balin's Tomb scenarios. And for me, it's my favourite ending condition, which is the game just lasts for 10 turns, and a good player wins if 5 members of the Fellowship are still alive. There's versions of this in the past where the game ends when you kill the cave troll, and that's just completely anticlimactic. But in this, you know, 5 members of the Fellowship, it's tough for the goblins, but I've done it. You know, I've seen it done a lot of times. Because if you can take out just the Sam, Merry and Pippin, it's not out of the realms of possibility to take down like Legolas and Gandalf and stuff, and it can go against the Fellowship, and it makes it a really, really cool and interesting scenario. Also, absolutely brilliant for a little bit of scenery making. As I said, when I got back into the game all those years ago, I was trying, this is about 10 years ago, I was trying to get people who didn't play the game to play. I was trying to get my friends, basically, who just liked Lord of the Rings, to play the game. And I used this scenario from the Journey book to get them into it. And I needed a bit of scenery. And so I built my Balin's Tomb, which was made of 4 columns that were toilet rolls with circles painted onto them. And the tomb was just, I think it's a bit of kind of cereal packet with some sand glued to it and painted grey. And I can't stress enough, as dreadful as this looks now, this was done when I was sort of in my mid-late 20s, but I just wasn't building any scenery at the time, and I didn't have any interest in it. I just needed something incredibly rough and ready to represent it. So my 4 columns hosted an awful lot of games in Moria of different people playing it, and this scenario is the reason I'm kind of playing the game today. By I painted models up for this scenario and I played it with my mates, and then one of those mates got interested in it, and he came to my first tournament with me, and so on and so forth. So there's an incredibly fond place in my heart for this scenario, and I think a lot of people feel like that. A lot of people would have got into it with the Balin's Tomb box game, with that scenery and with the goblins and with the Plastic Fellowship, and I think a lot, this Balin's Tomb is probably the first game that a lot of people played, and it's very cool. So as you can hopefully see, I do still have that classic Moria scenery. I haven't used it in a long time, but I did have it chucked at the bottom of a box, which I went digging for, and I was quite pleased to find it. And for this, I'm going to be, and you'll be surprised to hear, I'm going to build a new Balin's Tomb. I'm going to do a fancy one. I'm going to try and build it again, kind of quick and easy, like I did with my Watcher board. I'm not going to go too crazy on it, but I want to build a nice board to play on when we get to that part of the scenario, that part of the campaign. Sorry. So next up, we have the Escape from Dwarrow, which is an incredibly cool scenario in this kind of walkway. There's an interesting thing in here that we don't have too much scenery stuff in this book. We have the great guide at the end about painting Weathertop. We don't have a lot of making scenery stuff, whereas the old Fellowship of the Ring Journey book had really cool guides about building everything, and I think it gave this more of an idea of what this is meant to look like. This almost just looks like it's a path, and you get this kind of slightly abstract photo here where they're just on a column, but this should be kind of like the staircase kind of coming up and down, kind of more like the picture, I suppose. And there was a really great guide in the Fellowship of the Ring in the old Journey book to build it, and guess what? I'm going to be building it. This is the same basic scenario with the kind of 12-inch, 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 and you have to kind of, the Fellowship has to run through it while they're chased by goblins and a cave troll. I have played this in the past, and I was delighted to see that the team have made a really great change to this to make it, to stop it being rancidly unfun and make it really entertaining. And that change is really simple. The evil side is 2 captains, 24 goblins, and a cave troll. The goblins do not come back. The slain goblins don't come back. There's only 24 goblins. And in the old version, the goblins came back. They kept coming back. So if you can imagine that the Fellowship are, I can't remember which way, they're starting here, so they're running across here. And what would just happen is goblins would just fill up. This path here is only going to be 2 inches wide. Goblins would just fill this up. They'd just keep running onto the board here. And then the Fellowship would hit them about here. They'd kill 2, go forward an inch, and then those 2 would come on here. And it would just completely block it up, and they just never made any progress. And it was a real shame because it's such a cool, dynamic looking scenario and so unique because of the scenery. But it was just never any fun to play because it just never ended. Aragorn and Gimli or whoever it was would never ever lose to 2 goblins, but they'd just never make any progress. And there's a really subtle change there that will mean that this is going to be really great because it will become more dynamic as there's 24 goblins in total, but they will be cutting their way through them. So again, I'm excited to play that one and see how that pans out now. Then we have the Bridge of Khazad-dûm featuring everyone's favourite demon of Shadow and Flame. Again, based on the model from the version in the Journey book. It's 4x4 board this time with the Fellowship starting here, and they have to leg it across the bridge, and Gandalf has to Sorcerous Blast it. Again, I don't know if I've played this one because I've never had a Balrog. For our campaign, Tom Macklin is currently right now painting up a Balrog, and I want to say that just to date it, that at the moment it's late September. This book has just come out, and if we get this far in the campaign, which I hope we do, I think we're about 10 scenarios in, possibly something like that. So that's probably in 10 months time. So if we do this scenario, if we get to this scenario, it's probably going to be sometime around, I don't know, August 2021. But as of right now, Tom is so excited he's painting up his Balrog, so it's really, really cool. It's another tough one, I think. The Fellowship can just about kind of get to the bridge, I reckon, with heroic marches and that sort of thing, although the goblins do have 2 captains to call heroic march as well. But once it gets to the bridge, it's going to be really tough because what has to happen is Gandalf has to cast Sorcerous Blast on the bridge, and you basically have to get a 6, and that means Gandalf has to be free to cast. And as soon as the bridge goes down, any models on the bridge are removed as a casualty. So that means if he's just standing there, someone's going to charge him. So that means you kind of need to leave someone behind in front of him to hold the bridge. And of course that means if he successfully blows it up, they're going down as well. So I think cool for the scenario because someone would have to stay back as a kind of blocker for Gandalf, but dreadful for the Fellowship of the Ring, essentially, because Aragorn or Boromir would plummet to their doom along with Gandalf, but then maybe they'll just take the Balrog on both of them and it'll be fine. So there we go. Lothlorien. This is another absolutely brilliant scenario that I can't wait to get stuck into. I've played this one so much from the old Journey book. Again, very, very similar. Beautiful photography again, and what you basically have here is that scene that we've seen clips from. It was filmed but never included in the movie, where the Fellowship are trying to run into Lorien and the goblins are chasing them. Really, really, really cool setup. We have some woods here. The Fellowship deploy here just in front of the Silverlode, and the goblins deploy here. And the Fellowship have to leg it and get off here, but then lots and lots of wild wargs run on from here, and also there are wood elves hidden in the trees, and those wood elves are going to jump out, led by Haldir, and help the Fellowship. What I really, really loved was if you go and watch any of our old scenarios. So again, we've played this Lothlorien one on the GBHL podcast, and if you go and watch that, then you'll see that we play those scenarios using what we call the old rules, so the rules from before the Hobbit version, because that's what they were designed for. And when Heroic March was introduced in the Hobbit version, it really, really shakes the balance on some scenarios that depend on movement. And this is absolutely one of them, because essentially the Fellowship start at least 6 inches ahead of the goblins, Aragorn's got a free might point every turn, so he can just call Heroic March, and the goblins will never ever catch them. And it's really great to see that in here you've got weary from the chase. The Fellowship have been chased relentlessly by the goblins and are tired from battle and little rest. Good models may not use Heroic March in this scenario. So that's the sort of thing that's just fantastic to see, that this is a great scenario, and the team like Rob and Jay have looked and gone, this is what we want to include, but we need to make sure it works in the new edition. And subtle little changes like that, it just shows a level of care and attention that's really, really great to see. And it means that you've got a chance here. So that would absolutely, in my old Fellowship of the Ring book, there's a post-it note that now says no Heroic March, because otherwise they'll never get away with it. But again, it's one that I've played loads and loads and loads. And again, it's tricky for evil, but it's definitely possible, because what do they have to do? The evil player wins if 4 or more members of the Fellowship are slain. So 4 or more isn't that bad. It's not that, it's quite doable. Given you've got enough goblins and wargs to hopefully charge the little ones. But yeah, so that's really, really cool. And again, it's another one I can't wait to see. And my Brandywine, nay Bruinin, nay Silverload will come into play here as well. So that's good to see that getting a bit of love. And then we move into what is, for me, my favourite part of the trilogy, which is Amon Hen. We've got a selection of Amon Hen scenarios, and again, these are taken from the Fellowship Journey book with some slight amendments, essentially. So we start off with one with Aragorn. This is the Seeing Seat up here, and it's a 4x2, and we have Aragorn and Frodo up here, and they have to Frodo has to escape off this board edge, while Aragorn, pretty much alone, has to fight off Lurtz, an Uruk-hai scout captain, and 24 scouts. And you'll be pleased to know that he does get help. Legolas and Gimli have a chance of coming on from turn 4 onwards. So he's on his own for at least 4 turns, which is no easy task. And this year I played this quite a lot as it was, and it was a great little scenario, and I used to enjoy it quite a lot. But my only slight worry about this is this. I used to play this when Lurtz didn't have Heroic Strike. It was the old version where Lurtz couldn't Heroic Strike, and so Aragorn would always win if he got to a 6. And with his 3 attacks and 3 might and a free might, you could it didn't matter if he got trapped by Lurtz and all the scouts in the world, because as long as you got the 6, it'd be fine. And I do wonder in this if it's not impossible that on turn 1 or turn 2, Lurtz is going to trap Aragorn. Lurtz will win the Heroic Strike off, and Aragorn is going down in turn 1 or 2, which is going to be a bit dark. So for me, if I was playing this, I reckon I'd be banning Heroic Strike. Just to give it a chance. I don't know, I haven't played it, I haven't tried it, but it's the same scenario otherwise, and I just think Aragorn's going to need a bit of help there. So that would be my little tip for that one. Again though, lovely to see in the evil participants, Uruk-hai Scout Captain with 2-handed weapon. So our new Scout Captain that everyone's been hoping would be released for years and years, and finally is out, which is and he's in here, which is really, really, really cool. So great to have him in. So then, once you've played that, and Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli have fought off the Uruks and Frodo's escaped, you then move on to Boromir's Redemption, which is essentially what the rest of the Fellowship are up to at this point. This one, again from the Journey book, you have the this kind of tiny line around the 2 edges, which is about 3 inches. That's where all the Uruks deploy, and then you have Boromir and Merry and Pippin in the middle. And there are 18 Uruks and an Uruk-hai Scout Captain. So it's interesting that Lurtz isn't in this. They've replaced him with the new Uruk-hai Scout Captain, because of course this is the scene where you see that guy. And I think that's actually what they've tried to recreate here. You see him, and he's just about to chop Merry and Pippin in half, quite against Saruman's orders, we should say, and Boromir runs in and intercepts him. So you have them all starting in the middle, and then basically Boromir just has to hold on. He just has to hang on as long as possible. And so the objectives are that the evil player wins if they carry Merry and Pippin off the board when the game ends. And if they only get 1 off, it's a draw, and if they get neither off, then it's a win for good, which is very, very tough for poor Boromir. And the reason for that is from the 11th turn onwards, it's just like the Wild attack. If the roll for priority is ever a draw, then the game ends immediately. So Boromir, Merry and Pippin have to survive for 11 turns. 11 turns at least against 18 scouts and a captain. It's probably something, at least. I don't know how they'll cope, but at least the Uruks don't come back. It's not like an endless tide of Uruks, which is something. But 11 turns. There's also a really cool dynamic, which is if you are playing a campaign, what you actually do is see how long this game lasted, count the turns, and however many turns this game lasted, that's how long this one lasts. So that's a really nice, effective little way of combining the two. Yeah, I've done it before as well, where you play them next to each other, which was really good fun. We had them both laid out on a board, because this is a 4x4 and this is a 4x2. So if you have a 6x4, you just have them next to each other, and that works really well. We played it with 4 players, and it was a lot of fun. So we have that, Boromir's Redemption, and then we move on to the Breaking of the Fellowship, which is the final Ammon Hen's scene. And in here we have Lurtz, who starts in the middle, Boromir, who is dying. Boromir starts the game with 3 might points and only a single wound, but he may re-roll any dice in a dual roll and any dice when rolling to wound, which is amazing. Again, this came from the Fellowship book, but he's better. Boromir wasn't this good. In the old version, I think Boromir, he counted as being in range of a banner, I think it was. So he started on 3 might and 1 wound, and he could re-roll 1 dice and none of the dice to wound. Whereas on this, you'd back him to be winning every fight, and the only problem is going to be Lurtz strolling forward and sticking arrows in him. It's also really nice. They give huge spoilers. They give Lurtz his shield throw rule from his legendary allegiance, so he can chuck that, because this is of course the scene where he fights Aragorn. And then you have Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli here, who are kind of charging forwards to try and get him. And that objective is about killing heroes, as memory serves. Game lasts until one force is wiped out. The good player wins if at least 2 good hero models have survived when the Uruks have been wiped out. The evil player wins if the good player fails to complete their objective. So Boromir's probably going down, let's be honest, and then it's basically can the evil force kill another hero? No, they have to kill 2, don't they? Because they have to. The good player wins if at least 2 good hero models. So yeah, so evil have got to kill, as well as taking out Boromir, they've got to kill Legolas and Gimli or Aragorn, which is pretty tough, I think, but good fun. And then finally, for the Fellowship of the Ring, we have this wonderful scenario, Ambush at Ammon Hen. I'm not going to say too much about this, because this is the Ambush in Ammon Hen scenario from the Armies of the Lord of the Rings rulebook. It's exactly the same. They actually haven't, even the Scout Captain hasn't been put into it. So it's really cool. I've played this one in the past, last year, and it's everything together. So we have the Anduin down here. I think it's the only version of the scenario to actually include Sam as well, which is nice. Legolas and Gimli start here, Aragorn and Frodo start here. So it basically combines the previous 3 scenarios into one big battle, which is really cool and a lot of fun. So as you may have picked up on, we are going to be playing a campaign. And I was with Tom Macklin, and I was having a chat with him just last night, and we haven't quite decided if we're going to play these 3, or we're just going to play this one, or even maybe if we're going to play the 2-part scenario that was on the GBHL many years ago from White Dwarf. We haven't quite figured out which version we're going to do, but we're excited either way. And that's the end of Fellowship of the Ring. And then so we move on to, there's certainly less scenarios from the other 2 films, but we move on to this cool scenario called The Taming of Smeagol. This one might be familiar to you if you've been watching Battle Streams Middle-earth, because there won't be many other videos up, but one of them is a battle report of this, of me and Tom Macklin playing it, that we did as a kind of proof of concept for how we would record our battle reports on the channel. So if you do want to see this one play out, go and check that video out. What's kind of cool about this is it's just so quick and easy to play. It's on a 2x2 board. You only have Sam, Frodo and Smeagol, and it literally lasts until one of them kills the other. So either Frodo or Sam basically kill Smeagol, although it just counts as subduing him, or until Smeagol kills Frodo. If you're playing this as we did wonder if you're playing this as a scenario and Smeagol basically kills Frodo and runs off with the ring. I'm not quite sure what happens there. It kind of derails the entire plot. But there's some really nice rules in here, like if Gollum loses a fight against Frodo, he has to take a courage test, and if he fails, that gets subdued. There's also a nice one about the fact that the hobbits are asleep to begin with. And that they have to be woken up by Smeagol making noise, which is really nice. So it's a cool scenario. Again, it's been slightly adapted, but it comes from the Two Towers Journey book. It's the first one to come from this source, which is quite nice. But again, lovely to see those old books being referenced. We then have the Dead Marshes, which is a really cool scenario that it's probably one of the most changed from the Journey book. In here we have a Ringwraith on Felbeast and 6 Dead Marsh Spectres. I think the old version had a Ringwraith, 3 Dead Marsh Spectres and maybe 6 Morgul Stalkers. So a far bigger kind of contingent of evil. And this board is also bigger. So this is a 4x4, the old board was a 3x3. So if you imagine that in the old version, the board was much more congested and there were more evil models. So I think it's probably got a bit easier for Frodo and Sam, but I haven't played it, so I don't really know. But it's a very, very cool scenario where Frodo and Sam are trying to escape and trying to kind of get through the marshes. And again, all the evil models are sentries, which, like I said before, is a mechanic that I really like. So you have to try and sneak past all the dead marsh spectres as they kind of wander through the dead marshes, presumably saying, ooh. So that's cool. There's also a massive fell beast, which I've never played this scenario actually, but if that fell beast spots them, Frodo and Sam are in a world of trouble, right? But yeah, that'd be good fun. We then move on to Ambush and Ithilien, which again is exactly the same as the Ambush and Ithilien in the Lord of the Rings armies book. So there's no change there except the participants, which I found really interesting. I initially thought the only thing they're going to do is add in the 2 new Ranger heroes. So we've got Amborn, Ranger of Ithilien, and Mablung, Ranger of Ithilien. So that was fairly obvious. But they've also added Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol. And I was quite surprised by this, but if you go and check this scenario in the Armies of the Lord of the Rings book, for whatever reason, Frodo, Sam and Smeagol aren't in it, which I find quite interesting and quite strange. But yeah, so I doubt they're going to have that much impact on it. Are they? I don't think they have. They don't have objectives on this. So it's still, the game lasts until there are no Memorkill left on the board. The evil side win if both Memorkill can move off the board via the eastern board edge. The good player wins if they slay both the Memorkill. If only one Memorkill has managed to escape the board, the game is a draw. And there's no special rules for Frodo and Sam, so they're just going to be a couple of extra models to help the Rangers, really. But that was quite an interesting change, I thought. But yeah, it's good to get a scenario with the new Ranger heroes as well. We then move into Osgiliath, which is another one from the Two Towers journey book. We've got a 4x2 scenario here. There's buildings. This is quite cool. Frodo and Sam are kind of trying to stay alive and sneak off. There's a little Ringwraith again looking for them who will turn up, and it's basically about the bigger battles. The participants are people like, we've got all the heroes, so Faramir, Madril, Damrod, Amborn, Mablung, then the 3 Ringbearers, and then kind of 13 warriors of Minister, 12 rangers of Gondor, 6 Osgiliath veterans, and they're fighting 3 orc captains and 37 orc warriors. So this is actually quite a big battle. It's less about the kind of heroics of the Ringbearer and more about this big pitched fight. Frodo does still have to escape. Frodo has to kind of cross the board and escape, to try and get out of Osgiliath. But you're going to have a massive, massive battle on your hands, which could be really good fun. I was quite pleased that this first, I was really confused by this. It's 37 Orc Warriors, which is a really odd choice, but then it's because one's got a banner. So it's your 36 from your Pelennor box set, and then one with a banner, which is quite cool. But it's nice to see banners be included in narrative scenarios, because that doesn't always happen. So there we go. Next one is called Smeagol's Treachery, which is a brand new scenario. Again, it's one of the card games. This looks really good fun. It's like calling a dog to you or something. You've got Gollum at the end here, Sam at the end here, and Frodo, and they've both got to decide which one's going to get to Frodo first. I think they move to Frodo rather than Frodo moving to them, but they have to move along the path using a kind of Price is Right kind of card mechanic, which is quite cool. I really want to try this just for a bit of fun, and it strikes me as the sort of thing that maybe we might do on a Battle Streams in Middle-earth live stream. If we can work out some way to deal with the fact that half the cards it'll be really tough. It'll be really tough to do because we'd need half the cards each. But who knows? It'd be quite fun to do. It's that kind of game where you just have a bit of a laugh with a mate, I think. Then we move on to Shelob's Lair, which again is based on the version in the Two Towers book. It's 4x4, and we've got basically Shelob here, Sam here, and Frodo in the middle, and it's a big old scrap. Now, obviously, this is going to be tough for Frodo and Sam. There's no getting away from that, but there are some really, really nice, tasty rules to help and to give them a chance. Which is Sam automatically passes courage tests, and he causes terror. So that means that he's going to have no trouble charging Shelob, and Shelob and Gollum might have trouble charging him. Frodo can't put on the ring. Shelob can't use will points to pass courage tests in this scenario, which is really, really important. So it means if Sam just wins against her once, and he wounds, he's got a real chance of doing it. And that will help because wounds from sting, Strikes from Sting wound automatically. If Frodo's slain, place a 25mm marker where you feel. Sam moves into base contact with this marker. He may pick up and wield Sting from that point onwards. So the objectives are the good player wins if Shelob is slain or flees the battlefield. The evil player wins if both hobbits are slain. So basically Frodo's going down, and then it's up to whether or not Sam can get up to Frodo's body, grab Sting, and beat her in a duel. And he does have heroic strike, so he's got a chance. He's definitely got a chance. But it'd be good to see that, and again, a cool scenario to play with some cool models. Then we have a really interesting one, which is Cirith Ungol. This is a very, very cool scenario. It's a very small board, it's 2 foot by 2 foot, and it's got a really elaborate map. I'm not going to read through this, but basically you have a wall here, you have a big kind of outer wall of Cirith Ungol here. This is the gate, so Sam starts in this corner. You then have another wall here, and you have a tower. And obviously on a flat map, that's quite hard to get across, so you actually have this large kind of chunk explaining that. And there's then loads of objectives, and it's basically, as you say, good, and it's good in kind of inverted commas, is the Mordor Uruks, so Shagrat and the Mordor Uruks, and evil is Gorbag and the Orcs. And then we have extra models, Samwise Gamgee with Elven Cloak and Sting. So this is evil v evil, basically, and Sam just runs through Cirith Ungol like a boss. Because Sam's controlled by whichever player has priority, and he must abide by the following rules. He must always move his full move allowance if he's not charging, and must always try to move closer to reaching Frodo. Frodo's up at the top of the tower. Sam may move through models belonging to the player that controls him, though he can't finish his move in their control zone. Other models can never benefit from heroic actions, and, because that's from my old gaffer, Sam carries Sting in this scenario and also increases his attack characteristic to 2. Sam may spend a single point of might each turn without depleting his own store, even if he's got no might remaining. Additionally, Sam causes terror. So he's a little mini Aragorn. Little 2-attack Sam running around with Mighty Hero and causing terror. Chopping through orcs and Mordor Uruks with impunity. It's really, really, really cool. It's a very strange map. It's a very hard thing to get across, and the reason for that is this scenario actually came from an issue of Battle Games in Middle-earth. It comes from issue 49, and in that issue, it has changed a bit. You know, it's come on quite a long way since then, but it is the same basic scenario, and perhaps more importantly, the modelling workshop for that issue shows you how to make Cirith Ungol. And so, by looking through this issue of the magazine, we can actually see that it tells you how to build it, and it shows you that this thing that you're building here is the exact map that's in this book. And so you can use, basically, it's a very strange thing, but you can use this issue of Battle Games in Middle-earth to create this perfect map. And as you can see, it is very elaborate. So a full castle with a tower and a couple of walls around it. But it's interesting to see that they have, as I think Jay talked about it on the podcast, they went back to Battle Games in Middle-earth like they did for that Bree issue, to kind of find some inspiration there as well. And so it's really cool to have this updated. If we ever get to this scenario, we are honestly talking about 2.5 years' time. I'm not convinced I'll build this. It's incredibly specific, elaborate board for one scenario, but there are a few out there. I feel like James Clark had one at one point. I think it's on the channel, but it would be fun to use, certainly, and it's nice to kind of go back to know that you've got a ready-made tutorial for that, should you want to use it. And then, at penultimate, we reach the Plateau of Gorgoroth, which, to the best of my knowledge, is a brand new scenario. I don't recall seeing this one before. Very, very cool again. 2x2 board, Frodo and Sam are here, and it specifically says Frodo Baggins in orc armour, Samwise Gamgee in orc armour, and it shows those fantastic little models here. Made to order, perhaps? I've said it before, but my hope is for something like Adventures of Frodo and Sam made to order, where you get the Frodo and Sam in orc armour, Frodo and Sam at Mount Doom, Frodo and Sam at Athelion, maybe with a couple of golems or something. I think that would make a really cool made to order set, but we'll have to wait and see. But it's really nice to see them making sure there's a scenario to use those fantastic models. And what basically happens is there's a whole load of orcs, 24 orc warriors, a captain and a taskmaster, and they have to kind of cross the plateau here, and Frodo and Sam have to get past them, essentially. And there's a nice rule where the orcs have to move at least 2 inches forwards, so they can't just kind of go off and charge them, because you're in this weird situation where the orcs don't know Frodo and Sam are here, but the orc player does, so you have to kind of create mechanic for that. And to discover the hobbits, at the end of each turn, check to see if either of the hobbits are within 6 inches of any enemy models. Roll d6, and on a 6, they've been discovered. So I think, again, this would be really super, super cool, where the hobbits have to kind of crawl across, and they're bound to be within 6 for some time, and every turn you're just hoping the enemy doesn't roll a 6, because if you roll a 6, you've then got 26 orcs kind of turning on Frodo and Sam, which is bad news for them, I reckon. But it'd be a fun one to try for sure. And then, finally, we get on to the end of all things, which again is a really interesting scenario. It's actually got two areas that you play. One which is a 4x4 Battle of the Black Gate, and one which is a 2x2 battle, if you will, Battle of Wheels at the Gates of Moria. Again, superb photography with the Frodo and Sam from Mount Doom. So again, fingers crossed from Made to Order, and the Gollum, absolutely beautiful with some nice lighting on it. And what you have to do here is, this is just a massive, massive scrap. This is actually over several pages, but the participants in that are Aragorn, Gandalf, Legolas, Gimli, Merry, Peregrine, Pippin, Éomer, and then 25 warriors of Minas Tirith, 25 warriors of Rohan, and against them is a troll chieftain, the mouth of Sauron, 3 captains, 50 orcs, and the orcs just keep coming as they do in this situation here. And all that has to happen is they just have to keep fighting. This is going to be a long scenario to play. They have to keep fighting and not die. I think as long as one hero survives on the objectives for that. Where's the objective section? The game lasts until Frodo's destroyed the ring or is taken over by it. The good player wins if the ring is destroyed. The evil player wins if Frodo is slain or taken over. And additionally, if all the good heroes at the Black Gate are slain, the best good can achieve is a draw. So one of these guys has to stay alive. And then you have this fantastic scenario where Frodo and Sam are desperately trying to get up Mount Doom and chuck the ring in, and there's basically a rule called, is it the Will of Sauron, the Power of the Ring, where almost like Sauron from outside the board is casting spells on Frodo and trying to distract him as he crawls up the end of at the end of Mount Doom. And again, this one, which is a really cool and creative scenario, this comes from a Battle Games of Middle Earth issue. So in issue 77 and 78, they have the scenario and then how to build it. So I think it's in issue 77 they show you how to build the Black Gate, and in 78 so you've got your board ready for this game, and then in issue 78 I think it is, they tell you how to make this fantastic little 2x2 board with kind of mountainside and all the lava on it, which is super, super cool. And then they include the scenario in there, and again, of course, the scenario's changed, it's a little different. I've read through it. I'm not saying Frodo had it easy, but this looks really tough for Frodo. I believe in Aragorn and Gimli and Gandalf to kind of hold out and keep fighting, but this looks really, really tough for Frodo to survive. And not only that, not only does he have to crawl up this incredibly tough path whilst being bombarded with spells that he has to take a courage. One of these 3 things might happen. He takes a courage test, and if he fails, he gets put prone. One of them is if this spell gets cast on him, then you reduce his courage value by 1, which of course will then make it hard in the future to cast the other courage spell. And then the other one is you just put Gollum in base contact with him and make them fight. And he has to go up this winding path through all this. And then when he gets to the end, you have to roll a dice. This is how he destroys the ring. Base contact with the edge of the precipice, and then you enter a battle of wills. Both players roll a dice, re-rolling ties, and compare the results. And if the good player wins it 3 times in a row, the ring's destroyed. But if the evil player wins it 3 times in a row, Frodo's mind gets overthrown. Absolute disaster. So we get into this really, really tough situation for poor Frodo. Where he's got to somehow get to the Crack of Doom, which is going to be tough enough, and then somehow win 3 of these rolls in a row. And I mean, if you do, huge applause. And again, I get it was tough for Frodo, but I think this is going to be very, very tough, very, very tough indeed for the good players to do. But of course, time will tell. So that is it. That is the end of all things. That gets us to the kind of campaign element, which is absolutely brilliant. We've had a campaign element in both of the other, in our Scouring of the Shire and in Rohan and War and in Gondor and War and Rohan, and Gondor at War. But in here we get an enhanced version. So we have the same thing here where you get the bonuses. So Nazgul and Bree, If good win Nazgul and Bree in the Weathertop scenario, Aragorn arrives on a 3 instead of a 4. But if evil win Nazgul and Bree in the Weathertop scenario, Aragorn arrives on a 5 rather than 4. And you can already see that make a big difference. But as well, you get this lovely section here about the journey of the Ringbearer, which is really, really cool, because this campaign, far more than any other in any of the supplements, is following the same characters for so long. You know, isn't it the rule of this campaign that Merry, Frodo and Sam appear in every scenario? I think that's the... So they're going to be in absolutely everyone, and then other characters, other members of the Fellowship drop in and drop out. But when a Fellowship member dies, you have to roll on this chart at the end to see what happens to them, and on a 1 they're dead. So, you know, if Aragorn chokes at Weathertop and he dies, there's a chance here he can actually die and leave the campaign, which would be quite the disaster. You can use might on it, so there might be a good idea there in always hanging on to at least 1 might point with your heroes. And then there's this really, really cool stuff about them getting back their strengths. At the end of every game, they basically get D3 might, will and fate back, which isn't a lot, so they are gonna struggle more than they normally would. But you also get to choose the bravest companion, who gets D6 back, and the fool of the Took, who doesn't get any back. And then there are various rest points built in, so things like the House of Tom Bombadil, for example, and Rivendell, where they get all of their might, will and fate back, which is really, really lovely. So there's the whole campaign that takes you through everything with some lovely, lovely artwork. And that gets us on to the armies section. And so the armies section, this is the area where I think I'm going to spend a little less time. I've already talked for more than long enough about the narrative scenarios, but I think more people are often interested in this stuff in the Legendary Legions and the profiles. There's been lots of coverage of this, but we've got used to these sections in our books now. I do find them a bit strange. I have to admit sometimes, because you get a section here for the Fellowship of the Ring, and I get it, the Fellowship are fully covered, but they have no more rules. They don't get any new rules. So I think I didn't go back and check actually, but I think when Gondor at War launched, you got one of these pages for everything that was getting a new supplement. But they now seem to have slightly shifted that a bit to maybe give you an overview of any faction that fights within this book, which I guess is cool. And it's kind of good to get the strengths and weaknesses and the key models for new players and stuff. But it's just this slightly weird thing, I think, where you get the army bonus and the army composition, but you don't have any new profiles. Compared to something like Rangers of Ithilien, where it does have a purpose because we have new profiles. So I sort of understand that you've got these 2 new profiles, so you need to have this stuff down here to show that those 2 are in the army bonus. And this page essentially replaces the page for Rangers of Ithilien in the previous book, or the army bonus and army composition of Gondor, as it were, in the original book. So I get why you need that, but given that these pages don't replace anything, I'm not quite sure why we need that. But equally, I grant you, it might be a bit weird to have a section of armies in here without a bit of the Fellowship. So we do get these 2 new heroes. They're cool. An awful lot's been said about them. 35 points each. One of them gets the Narzug rule, like a free might point per turn for shooting, and one of them gets this very, very cool rule to give them Stalk Unseen and to allow them to see models that have Stalk Unseen as well, which is cool. More heroic accuracy, more might. I know a lot of people hate the Rangers of Ithilien because they're an all shooting army. I don't really play competitively anymore, so that it doesn't really bother me. It is dull to play against, but it just doesn't affect much of my hobby, so I try not to let it trouble me too much. So yeah, I guess these are, well, they're 70 points and they can lead 6 each. So what's a ranger? I honestly don't know these days. What is he, about 9 points or something? So you're probably looking at about another 60 and another 70, about another 130 points. So maybe these 2 now make that legion horrible up to about 600 or 700 points, whereas before it was only up to about 500. But it is what it is. If you go to a tournament, people are going to try and win. So yeah, it doesn't bother me too much. Then we go on to the Wanderers in the Wild, which is really, really cool. Kind of a bit odd. It makes sense to have Tom Bombadil here again, but then it also talks about Murin and Drar and that sort of thing. But of course, the reason to have this section here is to have the wonderful new profiles, which I'm far more excited about than I am about the Ranger of Gondors, for the Bree folk, for Barlam and Butterbur, and for Harry Goatleaf. And these are absolutely great. I was so pleased when I saw these guys were coming in. I've got no need for them whatsoever. I don't think anyone does, but they're beautiful models, all sculpted by Keith, and I just can't wait to get them and paint them up. As of yet, they're not available, but there's every chance, potentially, they could go on for pre-order tomorrow. So there's this wonderful rule here where basically Barliman can spend a will point to allow a hero to regain a wound lost in the battle, and if it's a fellowship hero, they get 4+ instead, which is super cool. And he can include Bill the Pony in his force, as if he was part of his warband. He only costs 10 points instead of 25. So you would do that. You have to do that if you want Barliman. You want Bill, so you get Barliman and Bill for 50 points, which is very, very cool. And then he gets his alliances down here. So he's historical allies with the Fellowship, which is cool. It'd be good to see him in there. Obviously, you're going to see some of the Fellowship later in the Legendary Legions, which he can't be a part of because they can't ally. But yeah, it might be nice to see if someone's got a Fellowship army about 800 points, they might now chuck him in to be 850. Also, he's convenient allies with any of these, and any of these that feel like they might be worth losing their army bonus for, could well be thinking about investing. I think certainly the Shire, where he can Bill can give hobbits, what is it, a banner reroll, I think, and he can give wounds back, and all you'll lose is woodland creature. I definitely think Barliman and Bill will be turning up in a lot of hobbit armies. And then we go on to Harry Goatleaf, who's the gatekeeper of Bree. He's got this. I love his rule. His lantern. He's got an area within 12 inches, 12-inch radius of Harry Goatleaf. It's illuminated as if it were daylight. Models within this radius can be seen clearly, unless another special rule prevents them from doing so. So that's really cool, and it's fun, incredibly situational. But who cares? It's a lantern, and he's an old man in a cloak. I like that he's got a rule like that. He's also the gatekeeper, which is a very, very funky rule, where after priority's been rolled, he can spend a point of will. He's got 3, and any infantry model within 6 inches and line of sight has to roll a d6, and on a 3+, they can't move. So you get a kind of 3 times a game, you get a mini transfix on a 3+. As he literally makes them stop and goes, "What's your business here?" So I think that's great again. And then what's also really cool, I love models that do this, like they did it with Thrain the Broken. Harry can be taken either as a good or an evil model. And again, as a good model, he's historical with the Fellowship and convenient with fairly obvious stuff. And if he's evil, he counts as a hero of fortitude in the Sharkies Rogues army list. And he also be included as part of the Chief's Ruffians. So that's really funky. I like that a lot. He'd definitely be a good hero for me. Certainly in the films, I don't think he's a bad guy. In the books he's a bit nasty, obviously, but certainly in the films, I think he's just an honest little guy. So I think, God knows, I'll buy him, and I doubt I'll ever use him in a game, to be honest, except for the scenario in here. But it'd be nice to have him and pop him in the cabinet. We then move on to the Black Riders. Again, I feel the same way as about the Fellowship here. I get it, but there's no new profiles, and the same with Cirith Ungol. But what they're doing is they're introducing them here because of the Legendary Legions. So fair enough. Talks you through. It's nice to read a bit of fluff about these forces. I think it gives people good stuff to read, and yeah, particularly if you're a new player, I think these pages can be very useful. Same for Cirith Ungol, more lovely photos, and then we move on to, I think, what's going to do the most certainly on tournaments to shake things up is the Legendary Legions, and these are all great. Again, they've been talked to death on other programs, so it's not really what I'm interested in, but what I love about these ones is that they are really thematic. They're really, really good. They're legions I feel that I would want to use because they're thematic, but also they'd be really, really, really good. I think the Breaking of the Fellowship, you've lost Gandalf, you've lost Barliman, poor guy, but what you basically gain is Fortify Spirit all the time, a banner reroll all the time, which is huge, and then these lovely, lovely gifts. They also get Elven Cloaks as well, but for free, and it brings them to, I think it's 600 points. So it's a really, really great army now, and suddenly Boromir, Gimli, Aragorn all having essentially 4 attacks because you're all going to be near someone. Legolas goes up to 3. Even Merry and Pippin are on 2 attacks, and with their Noldor and daggers are re-rolling 1s to wound, and the whole army becomes great. Gimli gets a 3 dice reroll 3 times a game. Legolas can reroll misses. Aragorn gets a Uruk Bane dagger, which would be really good if he's playing like kind of scouts, which would be very, very thematic, and so on and so forth. And I just love it. It just looks like it'll be great fun. And oh yeah, Frodo's got the Light of Arendelle, hasn't he? So there'll be some protection from shooting. I just think this is fantastic. It certainly does transform the Fellowship. Whether it makes them podium in top tabling, I doubt it. I don't think they ever will. Based on being on foot and based on the fact they've got Merry, Pippin and Sam. But they're great now. I think you could now take these to be thematic, but also think, you know what, I've got a chance at this. So they're great. Range of Aphelion, talk to death, exactly the same as it was, but we now have Mablung and Ambor. They'll shoot the hell out of you. It probably won't be fun. Lurtz's Scouts, so excited about this. I've got this force. I'm all ready to go with this. I've got about 30 Scouts painted. I've got Lurtz and Malher and the Scout Captain done. I don't think I'd have to do anything with this. I do have one more metal Lurtz, the one holding his bow down, that I haven't painted, that I might paint up in celebration of this. But it's a beautiful, beautiful Legion. They all get the, as long as you include Malher, and why wouldn't you, they all get the Malher's Marauders upgrade. And then you basically get two rules for Lurtz. And I haven't actually seen people talking about how they work together. The first one that was released was the challenge one. Lurtz may declare a heroic challenge against any hero, regardless of heroic tier. And if he declares a heroic challenge and the target declines, then Lurtz regains the might point. And there was an awful lot, when that was released, there was an awful lot of talk against it, sort of saying, oh, it's still rubbish, no one uses heroic challenge, and if they do accept, the hero will just strike up. But when you combine that with his second rule, the shield throw, once per game, Lurtz can use his shield as a throwing weapon. This is strength of 4, and any man-sized or smaller model hit by the shield is automatically knocked prone. Once Lurtz has thrown his shield, he no longer carries it and cannot use it for the remainder of the battle. Not that even though he no longer has it, he still gets his defense. If you combine these two, there's a really, really tasty combo where on that one turn he picks that hero he wants to take out, chucks his shield. It's a 4+. Who cares about the strength 4 hit? He's got a 3+ shoot value. Is it? Sorry, it's a strength 4. He hits on a 3+. It's a throwing weapon, so he won't get the -1. And he's got might. He's gonna knock that guy down, and then once he's knocked down and Lurtz is completely safe, he can then call a heroic challenge against him, against the prone hero on the floor, who even if he does win, can't strike Lurtz. That I think is great, and will make Lurtz an absolute tank. I really want to use this. I think it's brilliant, and I can't wait to see it on the table. And next up we have the Depths of Moria, which has been a mildly divisive Legion, possibly, for a number of reasons. So this one's quite good fun, because it's got kind of fluffy Moria stuff from the film. So it's got Cave Trolls, the Goblin Drums, Goblin Warriors, Captains, Shamans, and the Balrog. It does still include Black Shields, which I find kind of surprising. It's got Prowlers and Black Shields, even though they're not in the film, but it doesn't include, say, Marauders and the Dwellers in the Dark or something, even though they're not in the film. So who knows quite what the criteria there was, but there's a kind of mix there. But it does remove a lot of the utility units from Moria. So you lose the named heroes like Durburs and Groblog, and you lose Bat Swarms, and you lose Marauders and that sort of stuff. But you do get a hell of a lot of other cool stuff. So basically Balrog gets these cool Shadow and Flame rules where he only gets hit on a 5 because of his shadow, keep him safe from siege engines, and then he also can basically set a model ablaze as he bursts into flame, which is quite good fun to do. And the Goblin Drum counts as a banner for VPs, which is really good. And perhaps most importantly, we have this. Goblins get +1 fight value within 6 inches of the Balrog, so that kind of removes the need for Groblog. And the army will never be considered broken so long as the Balrog has 6 or more wounds remaining. Should the Balrog have 5 or fewer wounds, the army will break as normal, and if the Balrog is slain, the army will immediately count as broken. So it really makes the Balrog the centre of the force, which it should be, really. And I think this is a great Legion, because I think it does give you a choice. I don't think it's an easy choice. I think this force is brilliant, but I also think there's some strengths that it lacks that the normal force has. So I do think it would be an interesting dynamic. I did a bit of tallying up the other day, and I worked out that I've got a fairly fluffy Moria list. I've got stuff from the films basically. I've got about 45 painted goblins and some cave trolls and the drum. I do have some prowlers, but that's about it. And what I realised was I had about 800 points. But I don't have enough heroes to lead it, and I needed something like 19 slots, 19 more troop slots, and I don't have a Balrog. And it was one of those things. I was like, oh, I know, I need the only model I need to finish this army. It's a Balrog, but I haven't got one. I've never bought one, and I've always been, I don't know, scared is the right word, but I've got no interest in painting it. I really don't like the idea of trying to paint that thing. I think it looks like a really tough challenge that I wouldn't enjoy. So it's one of those interesting things that I've just done a stock take and I go, well, at one of these points, at some point in this, I'm going to have to bite the bullet and get a Balrog. But as I said earlier, Tom Macklin is currently painting us up a Balrog for our campaign. And then we have the Black Light Riders, which are possibly the most exciting legion in here. It's the one that I think has got most people talking about various permutations. And of course, this is the unnamed Wraiths, with the exception of the Witch King on horses. But they've got a lot of cool rules. But the really, really important rule is that they don't have the Will of Sauron. So whatever it's called, is it called the Will of Evil or something? But friendly Ring Wraith models do not lose a will point for being in combat as per their Will of Evil special rule. So that's what really transforms this force, because it suddenly stops them kind of fading away when they're in combat. And I think it makes them a really, really interesting choice. They've all got a free channeled transfix once per game, which is going to be brutal for enemy heroes, and they get this wonderful cumulative courage modifier the more are in range, which I think is spectacular. So I really love this. I think it is thematic, and I think it is good as well. And I think there's going to be some interesting synergies to be found, and I think it will do very, very well on the table in the hands of a skilled player. But equally, I don't think it's this horribly broken list that is going to start dominating. I think there'll be people out there. I remember Kieran Street took the 9 mounted to 7 stones many years ago, and Harry and Michael Parkill did the same last year, and I think people like this army, and I now think there'll be people out there who really like this army anyway, and are suddenly finding it's just that bit more effective. Exactly like you will for the Breaking of the Fellowship, to be honest. That's cool. As I think I said earlier, I do have my 9 Wraiths. They're all silver metal, they're all unassembled, and I'd really quite like them to look like this, so who knows, that might be an upcoming hobby project. And finally, I think it's Cirith Ungol. Which is one that I'm really excited about, even though I've got no reason to be really excited about. Fairly obvious, it's just Shagrat and Mordor Uruks, Gorbag and Mordor Orcs, and Shelob, and it's great. I've got all these models. I wanted to paint these models this year. If you go and watch my, whatever it was, the big 2020 plan video that I did in January, you'll see that Metal Mordor Orcs and Shelob were on the table. I haven't got to them, as the event I was hoping to take them to was cancelled. But I'm quite keen on this, and I've picked up the Mordor Uruks soon, so I'm really keen to get this force done. And it's just great. It's just brilliantly fluffy fun. We get the animosity rule, so the Orcs and the Uruks get +1 to wound if they're in the same fight as each other. We get the rivals for power, so Gorbag and Shagrat have a kill contest. And so the whichever one's behind gets a banner reroll. Shelob adds +1 to her fight characteristic if she's fighting kind of juicy things like men, elves, dwarves and hobbits. And my favourite rule, I think, is that as long as Shelob's not engaged in a fight, she can gobble up an orc within an inch of her, and then if she does that, she rerolls any number of dice in the duel roll. And bear in mind that she has, against good models, she already has 2 attacks and 3 because of her monstrous charge or pounce. So she's potentially got 3 dice charging you with fight 7, re-rolling all 3 dice. I love this Legion. I think it's brilliant. Again, I don't think it's top table because you do have some a few tricks. You've got a Shaman in there, but you lose so much from the Mordor list in here. But whilst it's cool, I don't think it will top table. But again, I think it will be nicely thematic. I'd like to play this. I think it'll be good fun. And you know, the horrible Shelob you have to face off will of course be mitigated against by the fact that you're not facing any kind of nasty Kardish, Ringwraith, Sauron type nonsense. So there's always a balance with these things, and I think they've struck it really well. I think, for my money, the Legendary Legions in this book are the best set we've had. I think this one makes me want to paint an entirely new army. This one makes me want to paint an entirely new army. This one makes me want to buy a Balrog, which I really don't want. This one makes me want to dig out an army I haven't used in years and get it back on the table. This one makes me want to just throw up, frankly. And this one makes me want to paint more Fellowship modules that I already have, and new characters, and go and play wonderfully thematic games on Amon Hen. I want to play this against this. No, that wouldn't work. I want to play this against this in points match games. I think it'll just be super. It'll just be so much fun. So yeah, for me, the Legendary Legions are absolutely amazing in this. They're absolutely great, and I think they've done a brilliant job, and I can't wait to play with and against some of those in tournaments. But whilst this has already been my favourite supplement, this has already been absolutely spectacular. I love it. I mega love it. I think it's incredible. This is what really puts it into the stratosphere for me, the Fantasy Fellowship section. I was so excited about this when it came out, and it didn't disappoint. We all know what it is by now. You get to pick your own versions of it. There's rules here. You get your roster, so you got your original 9 members, and you have to pick your alternates. They have to total to 750 points, and there are rules. So you pick a Ringbearer from one of the 4. You pick his companion. Merry and Pippin have to be under 50 points. You have to pick from a certain list to be a wizard, and then you pick your other heroes. And there's some also nice rules here about whether war gear is available and the rule of 1, and so on and so forth. Very, very, very cool. When we go over here, there's then a campaign. These are the same rules that we saw for the Fellowship of the Ring campaign, but it's obviously just it's not the Fellowship of the Ring campaign, sorry, the Quest of the Ringbearer campaign, but it's saying you should do the same thing. We have the scenarios, so it starts off with it's kind of a Fellowship of the Ring, Quest of the Ringbearer light, where it kind of has almost every other scenario essentially. And then we go through Fellowship, and then it starts bringing in all the other scenarios that the various members of Fellowship of the Ring were involved in Gondor at War and the War in Rohan. Because remember, this book only deals with the Ringbearer, with Frodo and Sam. So there's what's it get up to? It gets up to 23 scenarios, which is a hell of a lot to play through. And then here we get lovely campaign bonuses that explain how your campaign is going to develop, how you're going to, what happens to your Boromir character, how you get the Mithril coat and Sting, how you get your Elven cloaks, and you get all the toys from the Breaking of the Fellowship, which is amazing. So when they stop in Lothlorien, they get all the gifts, how they get armor, what happens at the Black Gate and stuff. It's absolutely brilliant. They give you a roster. It's super exciting, and then they give you these lovely examples, which are just so varied and so inspirational, and they make you think of so many different heroes. I think everyone had their ideas about who they wanted to be in things, but I've got to say, when I saw like the King of the Dead being in one, he hadn't even crossed my mind, and Thrain the Broken being in was another one. There's just some really kind of cool, wacky, out there choices that get you in, that can hopefully inspire you. And I love this. And the first thing I did when I got the book was write my Fellowship. So I've written my Fantasy Fellowship, and at the time I was thinking, well, why am I doing this? I'll barely use it in a game, let alone using it in a campaign. But then since then, this is the campaign we've been talking about. This is what we're so excited about. I spoke to Tom Macklin. He was really excited about Quest of the Ringbearer 2, and we are doing it. I have a 750 point campaign Fellowship written with Bilbo. I'll reveal the first 2. Young Bilbo is my Ringbearer, because I love young Bilbo. I'm a big fan of the Hobbit films, and Balin is going to be his companion, kind of building on the fact that Balin comes to see Bilbo. I'm going to set it after they returns from the Hobbit, but before the Lord of the Rings, so it's going to be after that visit of Gandalf and Balin to Bag End, and it's all going to be completely thematically correct. Everyone's going to be alive at the right time, and it's going to, I can't wait. I really can't wait. And so all this scenery that I've talked about building, all these models that I've talked about painting up, they're all being done for this campaign, and me and Tom Macklin are going to take you on a journey on battle streams in Middle-earth. And our plan is to do the entire thing. Our plan is also, when you get to this, our plan is to do more than this. I remember we were looking over it last night, and we were saying, but you know, the Farmer Maggots Farm one's not on here. We've got to do that, and we've done that throughout. So I think if there's 23 scenarios on here, we'll be hitting at least 30. And our plan is to make these really cool, narrative-driven, hopefully quite attractive battle reports. That's our plan, with a hobby element as well, and a wonderful story where you can follow this Fellowship. It's incredibly ambitious, and we honestly think if things go well, it might take us about 3 years, but we're keen to do it, and we're really keen, and we hope you kind of get excited about it as well. So there is a video right now, which is the Taming of Smeagol battle report. It's not part of the Fantasy Fellowship campaign, but it's our proof of concept. So if you're seeing this for the first time, go over to our, if you're on Battle Streams in Middle-earth already, great, and you'll see it in our videos. But if not, go over to our Battle Streams in Middle-earth YouTube channel and check the Taming of Smeagol battle report, and it gives you an idea of how we're going to do them. And we would love to hear any feedback and any ideas you have to make this better. And just go over, hit the subscribe button, over there, and then you'll get the updates as and when they come, and we just can't wait to get started essentially. So our plan is, it's all COVID dependent of course, but at the moment we can see each other, but our plan is to do about one of these a month, somewhere like that, to do one really good video per month, and then take a lot of time editing it and get it out. So you'll have hopefully a really chunky, delicious piece of content once a month, and we'll go on this story and see where it takes our fellowship. I'm not going to reveal who else is in it, and the wonderful thing is, because the final members will be announced at the Council of Elrond, you won't find out until, I don't know, maybe next August or something. You might not find out the final members, but yeah, I think that's the fun way to do it. But yeah, Bilbo and Balin will be setting off on their quest, hopefully sometime in late October or early November. This is absolutely brilliant. I cannot wait to get started on it. These few pages here have entirely reignited my hobby. I was doing it right on hobby, but it's completely made me fall back in love with the hobby and with YouTubing as well. The only reason you're getting this video is because of the Fantasy Fellowship, because I'm into YouTubing and filming at the moment. So I love it, and it's just the best thing ever. And then the final article is the Weathertop Masterclass, which was of no interest to me whatsoever. And I was like, well, that's fine. I don't have Weathertop. And then I looked over it and I thought, oh, Weathertop's quite nice. And I looked at this fantastic effect and I thought, oh, that looks really good and quite simple to achieve on Weathertop. I looked over that and go, God, that looks fantastic. I really kind of want one of them. And then I bought Weathertop. So this guide has suddenly become incredibly useful to me. So yeah, it's a really nice tutorial, very much along the lines of the kind of the stuff they've done for like the Rohan house in War and Rohan. Really nice idea of how to paint it up. I have to say, having it in hand, it's a very challenging looking kit. Lots of detail and little crevices to get into and stuff. So it's quite intimidating, but I'm up for the challenge for that. And yeah, we'll be getting that done fairly soon because it will be featuring quite early on in our Fantasy Fellowship campaign. And then we get to the end. There and Back Again, A Hobbit's Tale by Bilbo Baggins and The Lord of the Rings by Frodo Baggins. You've finished it. Best supplement ever. And so there we go. That was my look through the Quest of the Ringbearer, and if you can't tell already, I am crazy excited about it. I think this supplement is amazing. For me, it's the one that made me feel warmest and fluffiest inside as I read through it. I think the content is phenomenal. I think for a supplement that only introduces 4 new profiles, 4 new models, it's actually going to really shake up the competitive meta through things like the Legendary Legions. I think the Moria, Black Riders, Breaking of the Fellowship, Lurtz's Scouts, and even the Curathungal one, I think you will see them at events. They might not be podiuming, they might not be winning, but I think they're all really interesting Legendary Legions that you'll see a lot of. But the competitive side of things, for me, is so far down the list of interest. For me, this is what I'm excited about. I'm excited about the fact that that book over there is what got me back into the game 10 years ago, is now updated and fantastic in this brand new supplement. I've built this board, I've painted my watcher, and I've got so much more to come. As I said, I finally took the plunge and got this huge chunk of resin, got my Weathertop that arrived. I've also got a big bag of Weathertop, which I'm super excited to get stuck into really. And then I'll be building more terrain like this, including a brand new Balin's Tomb at one point for my fellowship. So these classic columns from the early days when I built them may have to remain retired. But it's lovely again because again reading through this book reminds me of this. And not just the scenery side of things, but the models as well. I've already dug out some of the cool models I want to get done. My metal Wood Elf Archers ready for the Lothlorien game, 3 more Ring Wraiths to complete my 9. And finally, and perhaps most excitingly, what I'm really giddy with excitement about is the Fantasy Fellowship. The point of all this, in a way, I almost feel bad for my Fellowship of the Ring over here, because whilst I'm doing all this cool stuff, they're not going to be in it. The Fellowship aren't going to be in it. It's not going to be Aragorn and Boromir or Gandalf or Gimli, or maybe it'll be one of them, who knows. It's going to be a different Fellowship taking that journey. And I'm super excited to follow them through it. And I've already started getting models for that ready. And right here, I have my 2 new Bilbo Baggins Eye. The Bilbo Baggins with Sting and the Bilbo Baggins from Riddles in the Dark. I've already got lots of young Bilbos painted up, but I'm excited to put some paint on these 2. So I've got a variety of models for use in our scenarios. So that's where I am. I can't remember being this excited about the hobby for a very, very, very long time. The supplement's amazing. I highly recommend you pick it up, and I can't wait to see what we come up with on the channel and what other people come up with their fantasy fellowships and their scenery. I think it's going to be a great few months for the Middle-earth strategy battle game. And so that is it for my review of Quest of the Ringbearer. It's probably a long one. I'm not going to apologise, because that's the point here. You're going to be listening to that while you paint. But I hope it's allowed to get you some painting done, and I hope you've enjoyed the content. In the meantime, whilst you are here on Battle Streams of Middle-earth, I hope you're enjoying the channel. I hope you're liking what we're doing here with our fortnightly streams. Remember, every other Friday, myself and Steve will sit down and paint with you for about 4 or 5 hours and kind of just chill out and chat and paint some old models and go through that classic Battle Games of Middle-earth series. If you do want to join us, you'll be very welcome. If you do like what you see on the channel, then please, please, please feel free to pop over to our Patreon account. The links are down below, and you can sign up and help us out in any way you can. It would be greatly appreciated. Until next time, I hope you enjoy your quests. I hope you enjoy your fantasy fellowship, and we'll see you next time on Battle Streams of Middle-earth.